G Butterfly TV. Let me know where you're watching me from. Here I am, late. I say, dang it, my intention wasn't to be on here late because I got to go to work. Y'all see I'm still in these glasses because my eyes still hurting and red. You look well rested today. Oh, I wish I felt like that because I'm so sleepy right now. I'm going to try to go for my topics. And we'll see. Y'all know over here, once I get sleep, I tell you, I'm sleepy. I got to go click. And I'll cut this thing off in a minute. But we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't know how many people were over here yesterday, but did we laugh when we talked about that AARP? Because y'all thought I was playing. Who is that? Hey, Sade, what's going on? Sade, type in the comments what's the name of your YouTube channel so I can tell people to go over there and listen to your music. Okay, the name of her YouTube channel is Sade, Chardee. Y'all can check her out over there on YouTube and listen to her music. Sade, she's on YouTube and she's an up and coming artist. She's a singer and she's my little niece. So y'all check her out over there on YouTube, Sade. Hey Tim, you came back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You still have a beautiful accent. It's just as country and southern as it want to be. I don't care what I try to do to sound a little bit more refined. It don't work. It does not. You feeling better than legs not hurt. Ooh, when I tell you my legs is all bruised up from falling the other day, they all bruised up. They feel a little bit, as long as I don't touch my knees, it's not so bad. But if I touch my knees, hey, yeah, hope you're feeling better. I'm glad to see you back, and I hope you're feeling a lot better, yeah. I know you told me you had a procedure. And you know what, just yesterday we were talking about people who needed caregivers, so I'm quite sure after you had your procedure, you probably needed a caregiver. Let's get on these topics, because I can't be here long. I'm sleepy already. Al Pacino, who is 83 years old, is expecting a baby with his girlfriend, Noah Alfala. She's 29 years old. She's currently 8 months pregnant with the star's fourth child. She previously dated Mick Jagger, and I think from 2017 to 2018, or it was 2018 to 2019. But I said, hey, she know how to pick them because she went from Mick Jagger, who probably got a whole bunch of money, and she didn't went to Al Pacino. Al Pacino, 89 years old. Having a girl. No, are you thinking about Al Pacino's girlfriend? I don't think she's had the baby yet. You may be thinking about Robert De Niro. He just had his seventh baby last month. Robert De Niro just had his seventh child last month, and he's 79. Now Al Pacino is 83. He's getting ready to have his fourth child. Sade is Sade on all platforms. My songs. Okay, Sade. That's good. I'm 57 and was wondering if I could have more kids. Love Harlot. You 57 and you wondering if you can have more kids? Are you a woman or are you a man? And I'm only asking because I really can't see the profile picture that well. Loveaholic doesn't, I can't tell if that's a lady's name, man's handle. And I really can't I can't see the profile picture really well. Okay, Loveaholic, you're a man. So you say you want to know at 57 you can still have more kids. I'm sure. We got a 79-year-old and an 83 who's still out there making babies. So you might still be able to go to your doctor first. Let the doctor do all the tests on you to make sure that you're able to still have kids. And if you can, find you someone that you will want to procreate with. And if you're in a position where you can take care of a child, by all means, knock yourself out. Talked about Al Pacino, 83, having his fourth child with his 29-year-old girlfriend. I say she knew how to pick them. Because at 29 and 83, what do they have in common? That's like her great-grandfather. They have absolutely nothing in common. Except sex, obviously. Y'all put in the chat, what do you think Al Pacino at 83 have in common with his 29-year-old girlfriend who's currently pregnant? Loveaholic, yes, my prostate is enlarged though. Well, Loveaholic, if your prostate is enlarged, I'm not a physician, so I can't tell you if you can still have kids, but you might want to get with your physician. I think prostate will be a urologist, if I'm not mistaken. So you might want to get with a urologist and find out what are your options or what's the probability of you going and procreating and making babies with enlarged prostate. Daddy Longstreet say his checkbook, that's what they got in common. Tim say he gonna have a black baby. Oh, Lord. Let me see. Neiman Marcus say his kisses. They have in common kisses. I bet he's a good kisser. Hey, Diane Miller. Over here, he just asked for a DNA test. Did he really, Otis? Smart man. Smart man. Over here on Facebook, Otis said that Robert De Niro just asked a young lady for a blood test, a DNA test. That's smart of him because he probably has a fortune and a legacy, and he want to make sure whatever he's leaving, he's probably leaving it to his rightful heirs. And she's 29 and he's 83. I don't know. They say men can make babies well into the senior years. I know women have kind of like a cutoff time because, you know, you go through menopause and all that kind of stuff and you're unable to have kids. But that's smart of him to ask her for a DNA test. And I ain't mad at him. Oh, look, Tim's so crazy. He over here talking about Ida Pappy. Loveaholic say it's about the spiritual connection, not the age. You know what? I don't know nothing that I can be spirit. Now, I'm 54. I'm 54. That young lady is 29. She younger than both my sons. I'm 54. I don't know nothing I can have a spiritual connection with somebody 83 years old. I can't see it. I can't see it. Anybody else have a comment on what they think he has in common with this 29-year-old woman? I don't know. I can't see no spiritual connections with somebody 83. Oh, Sean said he heard. You heard that? And you know, like last month, Robert De Niro had his 7th child at 79. So that just goes to show that men late in years can still, you know, have children. Our next topic. Today is June 1st, everybody. And if you're familiar with that day, then you know it is the beginning of hurricane season 2023. 3 of the worst hurricanes to hit the Galveston coast were the 1900 storm, Hurricane Alicia in 83, and Hurricane Ike in 2008. Per Fox 26 News, items that you should have in your preparedness kit are non-perishable, easy-to-prepare foods, 1 gallon of water per person per day, first aid supplies, flashlights, charcoal or gas grill, games to keep kids entertained, tub stoppers to have a supply of water on reserve, cash in small denominations, and if you're not sure what small denominations are, that's 1s and 5s, flashlights, battery-powered radios, extra batteries, 7 days worth of medication, a medication list, deed to your house, passports, birth certificates, insurance policies, cell phone chargers, family and emergency contact lists. Those are some of the things they say you should have in your emergency preparedness kits for hurricane season. We were in Galveston. With that being said, I actually got some information about hurricane season. Now, if you're not from the coast, you probably don't have to experience hurricanes. You might get thunderstorms. Depending on where you live, you might get tornadoes and things of that such. But June 1st, I think it goes all the way into November 1st, is hurricane season. Here in the Houston, Galveston area, we always have to prepare for hurricanes. Growing up in Galveston, which is the island, about 40 minutes south of Houston, we've always had to deal with hurricanes and preparing for hurricanes. So I actually got some information on the hurricanes that were very detrimental to the island. And so I'm going to read a little bit of the information to you. The 1900 storm. How many of you have heard of the 1900 storm that hit Galveston? I know if you're from Galveston, I know you've heard of it. But wow, Otis Moore said, I got three generators and a plan. I know that's right, 3 generators. The 1900 storm, that was devastating to Galveston Island. This killer weather system was first detected over the tropical Atlantic on August the 27th. While the history of the track and intensity is not fully known, the system reached Cuba as a tropical storm on September 3rd and moved into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico on the 5th. A general west-northwestward motion occurred over the Gulf, accompanied by rapid intensification. By the time the storm reached the Texas coast south of Galveston late on September 8th, it was a Category 4 hurricane. After landfall, the cyclone turned northward through the Great Plains. It became extratropical and turned east-northwestward on September 11th, passing across the Great Lakes, New England, and southeastern Canada. It was last spotted over the North Atlantic on September the 15th. This hurricane was the deadliest weather disaster in United States history. Storm tides of 8 to 15 feet inundated the whole of Galveston Island, as well as other portions of the nearby Texas coast. These tides were largely responsible for the 8,000 deaths, estimated range from 6,000 to 12,000, attributed to the storm. The damage to the property was estimated at $30 million. So just imagine, that was $30 million in 1900. Do you know how much devastation that is in 2023? Probably in the trillions. I'm just guessing. I'm not a mathematician. I'm just guessing. Hey, Lisa Potts, how you doing? Sean Christian say they have a reenactment room with a full wind tunnel to simulate the conditions of Hurricane Alicia in San Antonio. I went to that. We went to the Wax Museum and we actually went into that simulation for the hurricane. That was pretty cool. The true storms begin in Africa. I honestly don't know. You probably could Google that or send an email to the meteorologist on your local news station. They may be able to answer that question for you. Now I'm going to give you some information about Hurricane Alicia. Now, I remember Hurricane Alicia because I was in Galveston. I didn't know that, and I went in the store in San Antonio. Okay, Dustin, if you ever get back to San Antonio, go to the Wax Museum. I think it's Madame Tussauds. Is that it, Sean? Madame Tussauds, that's right across the street from the Alamo. I think that's the Wax Museum. And they have they had the simulation in there when I went. Like I say, it's been about 8 years, maybe 5, 7 years. You may want to check and see if they still have it. Sean Otis Moore say in 1983, which was when Alicia hit Galveston, he said, I stayed on 16th and Avenue O, the one-way, half block off seawall when it hit. Me and my wife, Sheila, were neighbors and sat on the porch during Alicia. It was horrible. I remember I was at my grandparents' house when Alicia hit. You would have to live in Galveston to know the whole feel and the whole vibe when the hurricane is coming. The city is just, you can feel the intensity in the city where everybody's trying to get gas. Everybody's trying to go to the store. They're trying to get bread. They're trying to get canned goods. They're trying to get water. They're trying to get everything. There's only so much you're going to get at the store. Hey, Kitty, thank you so much for the rolls. So just imagine, I'm going to tell you what category this was in just a second when I read about it. But Hurricane Alicia came when I was in the 8th grade, and it came during the summer when it was time for me to get ready to start high school. And that's why I remember it so well, because I was excited about going to 9th grade. But school was delayed, I think, 2 weeks because of Hurricane Alicia. So we couldn't start school on time. And I can remember my brother had just graduated and had just left to go to the military. So he wasn't there with us when Hurricane Alicia came. But if you live down there, you can just see like the calm before the storm. And I know that's so cliche, but you can see it, you can feel it, and then the whole city just shuts down. And if they tell you to leave, and it's so weird, because growing up, we never left for the hurricanes. We never left for the storms. I'm quite sure there were other hurricanes up until 83. I just remember 83 because I was older. Again, I was going to the 9th grade. So I remember what happened with Hurricane Alicia. We never left. As a kid, I can never remember leaving the island when they said a storm was coming or when they said a hurricane was coming. I can remember my grandfather used to board up all of the windows. We would just be inside. I remember the night that Hurricane Alicia came. You can hear the wind. It's like a certain sound that it had. And I wanted to stand and just look. And at my grandparents' house, they had the front door. But then they had 2 panels on the side of the front door that had glass. I think it was 4 or 5 glass, glass openings. I don't know what you call it. On the sides of the front door. You had the frame of the front door, and then you had glass going down the side with wood in between it. If you can kind of understand. I wish I had a pen. I would draw it so you can see. But anyway, I was so amazed at how, just listening to the wind, just listening to everything that was going on with this hurricane, I remember standing up and just looking out the window, not afraid that the window could bust, because on those little windows, my grandfather thank you for contributing to the goal. I am real people. How you doing? Now the little bitty windows, I know you heard me say earlier that my grandfather would make sure that everything was boarded up. And see, down in Galveston, most houses have what's called storm blinds. It's the big green blinds, and you used to have a crank, and you have to crank them open, you have to crank them closed. Actually, my uncle still has those on his house, and they're like heavy, heavy metal blinds, and they're on the outside of the house. And I remember my grandfather, that's what he would do. Over there, he didn't have to he didn't have to put wood. We had to crank blinds. He would crank the blinds down to give you some protection from the heavy wind. But there were these little columns on the side of the front door that had glass, and you could see out. But he couldn't cover those up. And I can remember standing there, and you can just hear the sound. It was just the wind had this sound that you don't hear any other time. Otis Moore say, sound like a train, the wind was so strong. On the Facebook page, a lot of these people on my Facebook page are from the Galveston, Tx City, Lamarck area, because that's where I'm from. So they know what I'm talking about. I can remember during the hurricane, I would get up and just go stand in the door. I'm the breadwinner for, okay. I would go stand, not in the door, because you couldn't open up the door. You didn't want to open it up while the hurricane was, but I stood in the window with my face just in the window like this. Just imagine this is the window pane, and I'm just looking and just watching the wind and just whip. It's something that you would see on TV, but you were actually seeing it live as an eighth grader looking out the window. I'll never forget that. And like Otis was saying, the sound that you hear, the rain, and it's just like, I don't even know how to explain the noise that you're hearing outside when all of this is going on. And as soon as that hurricane or the outpass is over, complete still and silence. That's all you hear. Silence. When you get up the next day, silence after the hurricane. And you open up the door, you can go outside. Everything is everywhere. But it's a silence that's not a normal silence in the city after a hurricane. I'm telling you, it is something. I remember, and after a hurricane, everything is closed. No utilities. I think the reason we had to wait to go to school 2 weeks late, I want to say because there was no power in the city. Well, not in the city, on the island. I think we did not have power for 2 weeks. Everybody was driving around town trying to find whatever rations you can find. I mean, in food, trying to find water, trying to find ice, all of those things. And you ride around and you look at the devastation. And, hoping your family is okay, riding, it's just, if you don't live there or have never lived through something like that, it's hard to explain. You have to actually see it and experience it for yourself. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Hurricane Alicia, which happened in 1983. Alicia formed over the north central Gulf of Mexico on August the 15th. It drifted slowly westward and northwestward while steadily strengthening on the 16th and 17th. This motion brought Alicia over the western end of Galveston Island as a Category 3 hurricane on August the 18th. Alicia moved northwestward into Oklahoma as a tropical depression on August the 19th, then turned northward before dissipating over Nebraska on the 21st. The Coast Guard cutter Buttonwood moored into Galveston reported sustained winds of 96 miles with gusts of winds at 125 miles an hour. Hobby Airport at Houston, Texas reported 94 miles per hour sustained winds with gusts of 107 miles per hour. Wind gusts of hurricane forces in downtown Houston littered the street with broken glass as windows broke in high-rise buildings. Additionally, 23 tornadoes were reported from Alicia. Now, you would have to know, in the Galveston, Houston area, tornadoes is not something that we dealt with. When we had a tornado just 3 or 4 months ago, that was unprecedented here in Houston, and it was unexpected. Now, hurricanes, tropical storms, we're kind of used to those things happening down here. But they were saying, which I didn't know, again, I was only in the 8th grade, I didn't know that there were 23 tornadoes. So I don't know if that added. Let me see. Otis Moore say ears pop like on a plane when the center passed over. I'm telling you, it's a sound that you cannot explain. And as soon as it's over, silence. Silence. And I hope none of you have to live through a hurricane, but if you do or have, you understand what I'm talking about. So that was Hurricane Alicia, which was in 1983. Again, we started school late. I can assume we got out of school late just because we went 2 weeks late. But we were able to just walk through the city. The water was maybe thigh high in front of my grandparents' house. And I think I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago. Back then, we were young kids just in Galveston, didn't realize how unsanitary and how unsafe it was. We would just go walk outside in the flood water, just walking down, just being kids. And it's so weird because right now I'm thinking about it, our parents didn't stop us. Ooh, that was good. Now, the next big hurricane we had in that area, well, no, this is not a hurricane that I'm going to tell you about, but it devastated the city of Houston like a hurricane. Oh, devastating to us in Virginia. I'm actually going to talk about Katrina, just not today. Today would have been the first day of hurricane season. I said I wanted to just talk about, because I'm in Houston, the closest coast is Galveston. So I just wanted to talk about the storms that were devastating to Galveston. But eventually I get around to Katrina because we all know Katrina affected Louisiana and all the surrounding states. Uh, Tropical Storm Allison. I don't know if anybody remember. Let me see. Otis Moore said water was knee high standing on seawall a couple of hours before. You know what I remember again? Living in an island, this is what we used to see. When tropical storms were coming, hurricanes were coming, the Coast Guard would have to go and get those people out of the water because that's when they would want to go surfing. And we'd be like, the hurricane is coming. Why is your crazy behind out there trying to go surf in the water? The Coast Guard would have to tell the people, you got to get out, you got to get out. But that seemed like that would be the time when everybody wanted to go surfing. Not everybody would want to go surfing instead of going trying to find shelter. Island living. That's island living for you. Every time it's going to be a terrible storm. People like to go run to the beach, stand on the seawall, and watch the horrible weather coming in. I'm like, that's crazy to me. But hey, knock yourself out. But yeah, they would go out there trying to go surf and do everything. Now, Tropical Storm Allison was not a hurricane. But again, the devastation that it had in Houston was that of a hurricane. So that's why I decided to throw this one in, even though it wasn't a hurricane. Allison's long and complex career began on June 5th as an area of disturbed water over the northwestern Gulf of Mexico, and it developed into a tropical storm. The storm made landfall near Freeport, Texas later that day. Allison weakened to a depression on the 6th while drifting northward. Then it made a slow loop over southeastern Texas from the 7th to the 9th of June of 2001. The cyclone moved into the Gulf of Mexico on the 10th and acquired subtropical characteristics. It then moved east-northeastward over southwestern Louisiana on the 11th of June, where it re-intensified into a subtropical storm. Allison weakened back to the subtropical depression on the 12th while continuing east-northeastward, and this motion carried it to southeast North Carolina by the 14th, where it again stalled. The cyclone drifted northward to the northwestern. Hold on. The cyclone drifted northward to northeastward drift over land on the 15th and 16th. This was followed by faster northeastern motion on the 17th as the center emerged into the Atlantic. Allison regained subtropical storm strength later that day before becoming an extratropical on the 18th southeast of Cape Cod. The system dissipated southeast of Nova Scotia the next day. Allison brought tropical storm force winds and above normal tides to portions of the Texas and Louisiana coast. However, the greatest legacy of the cyclone was the widespread heavy rains and resulting floods along the entire path of the cyclone. Houston, Texas was the worst affected area, as the Port of Houston reported 36.99 inches and several other locations reported more than 30 inches. They mean a flood. The storm also spawned 23 tornadoes. Allison was responsible for 41 deaths and at least 5 billion in damages in the United States, making it the deadliest and costliest U.S. tropical storm on record. I'll never forget. You can see on the news, everywhere people was trying to go where they needed to go, they could not because the flooding was so horrible over the city. You had them telling people wherever you are, you need to get as high as you can. And it's weird because every part of the city did not flood. I worked in the medical center. The medical center was flooded. Luckily, we were already off work. I was at home with my 2 boys. We lived in an apartment. I'm trying to say that we lived in 2001. We lived in a downstairs apartment in 2001. But that side of Houston did not flood. There was no water. I was actually off work for about 2 weeks straight. And I was glad, they paid us and everything because we couldn't go to work. The medical center was flooded. And where I was working at the time was not patient care. So we didn't have to go in. I can remember for those 2 weeks, I sat in front of the TV and watched the TV all day, every day, looking at the devastation. I almost felt like I was getting depressed because it was so sad to see everything that was happening in the city. But even though we were in the city, the flooding wasn't all over the city. My kids was outside playing with their friends because they didn't have to go to school. They were able to still go out and play, but when you look at the news, you see another part of the city that was totally devastated because it was underwater. It was the weirdest thing, and I'll never forget that here in Houston. God protect you. Yes, indeed. And I was sitting, I had to pull myself away from the TV because it was just constant. The news was 24/7. I mean, the local news, not like CNN, news like that is 24/7. I want to say like the local news channels, 2, 11, and 13, Fox. That's all they showed was the devastation here in Houston. So if you ever hear them talking about hurricanes, yes, we've had 3 very bad hurricanes, but Tropical Storm Allison ranks right up there with those hurricanes when it comes to the devastation that it caused here in the city of Houston. So I wanted to throw that in when I talked about the storms today, because I said you can't really talk about the hurricanes without talking about Tropical Storm Alicia. Most people think that Allison. A lot of people think that Allison was a hurricane, and it was not. It was. Tim said I can listen to you all day. Hurricane Ike hit in 2008. That was another one that was very devastating. Well, let me read this and then I'll tell you what I saw. Ike was a long-lived and major Cape Verde hurricane that caused extensive damage and many deaths across a portion of the Caribbean and along the coast of Texas and Louisiana. It originated from a well-defined tropical wave that moved off the west coast of Africa on August the 28th and then became a tropical depression on September the 1st, about 775 miles west of the Cape Verde Islands. The depression quickly strengthened to a tropical storm later that day. Ike became a hurricane on September 3rd, and Ike reached an estimated peak intensity of 145 miles per hour, which made it a Category 4 hurricane. On September 4th, when it was located 550 miles northeast of the Leeward Islands. After weakening briefly, Ike regained Category 4 status just before moving across the Turks and Caicos Islands on September the 7th. Ike then passed over Great Inagua Island in the southeastern Bahamas at Category 3 strength. Ike turned westward and made landfall along the northeast coast of Cuba in the province of Holguin early on September 8th, with a maximum sustained winds estimated near 135 miles per hour. Ike made a second landfall in Cuba over the extreme southeastern part of the province of Pinar del Rio on September 9th with winds of 80 miles an hour. It moved on to southeastern Gulf of Mexico later that day. Ike developed a large wind field as it moved northwestern across the Gulf of Mexico over the next 3 days, with tropical storm force winds extending up to 275 miles from the center and hurricane force winds extending up to 115 miles from the center. The hurricane gradually intensified as it moved across the Gulf toward the Texas coast. Ike made landfall over the north end of Galveston Island in the early morning hours of September 13th as a Category 2 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 110 miles per hour. The hurricane weakened as it moved inland across eastern Texas and Arkansas and became extratropical over the middle Mississippi Valley on September the 14th. It then moved rapidly through Ohio Valley and into Canada, pouring wind gusts to hurricane force along the way. Grand Turk Islands reported sustained winds of 116 miles per hour at the center of Ike as it crossed the island. Storm surges of 15 to 20 feet above normal tide levels occurred along the Bolivar Peninsula of Texas and in much of the Galveston Bay area, with surges of up to 10 feet above normal occurring as far east as south central Louisiana. Storm total rainfalls from Ike were as much as 19 inches in southeastern Texas and 14 inches in Cuba. Ike left a long trail of death and destruction. It is estimated that flooding and mudslides killed 74 people in Haiti and 2 in the Dominican Republic, compounding the problems caused by Faye, Gustav, and Hannah. The Turks and Caicos Island and the southeastern Bahamas sustained widespread damage to properties. 7 deaths were reported in Cuba. Ike's storm surge devastated the Bolivar Peninsula in Texas, and surge, winds, and flooding from heavy rains caused widespread damage in other portions of southeastern Texas, western Louisiana, and Arkansas. 20 people were killed in these areas, with 34 others still missing. Property damage from Ike as a hurricane is estimated at $19.3 billion. Additionally, as an extratropical system over the Ohio Valley, Ike was directly or indirectly responsible for 28 deaths and more than $1 billion in property damage. Ike was a booger bear. When you couldn't go back into the island unless you had this little sticker on your car, and they only wanted to let people come into the city who had a need to go there. Most people who left the island for, what do they call it when you have to leave? I forgot what it's called. I haven't had to leave in so long. What do they call it when it's the hurricane Otis and it's time for you to leave? What do they call that? Evacuation. That's it. Evacuation. They were only letting people back into the city if you had a dire need to go in the city, if you worked in the medical center, if you were first responders, if you were police officers. Other than that, you couldn't go back in Galveston. Many people were gone for weeks. A lot of people who moved away from Galveston Island during Ike have never returned. A lot of them moved to the mainland, which is Lamarck, Tech City, Dickinson, Hitchcock, Clear Lake. They moved further to coming toward the city of Houston. Most people just never returned to the island. And it was very unfortunate because some people have lived their whole lives, their whole families were down there. I can remember once they opened up the city and people could go back home, I told my 2 boys at the time, they were, I think preteens, I believe, in '08. Yeah, they were probably preteens. I said, come on, let's ride back to Galveston. Because for me, even though I've been living in Houston for years and years and years, to me, Galveston is still home. So I still try to go back sometime. When I got in my truck and just came, you would have to know what it looks like going down 45 South. Once you go through like Lamarck, Texas City, and you're getting ready to cross over where you would exit for Hitchcock. Hitchcock is another little coastal town right there. You saw boats that had washed up to the highway. And when I saw that right then, I knew it was going to be horrible when I drove into the city to look. When I drove through Galveston, I was like, I could not believe what I saw. The devastation was massive in Galveston when I came through. You saw boats and cars and houses all crunched up. It was bad. I'm driving. I got both my boys in my truck, and I'm just driving through the city because I want to see what it looks like. It took everything in me just not to cry and boo-hoo and bawl, because even though I no longer live there, that was still home. Wow, I even kind of feel full now, and that was years ago. But just imagine, this is all you know as home, and you go back and it really doesn't look like that anymore. It was bad. I'm telling you no lie. And I'm not looking at Facebook because I know the people on Facebook, they were there or here, so they know. But over here on TikTok, you probably don't know what we saw, what it looked like, the devastation that the people who lived down there, what they had to go through, how some of them didn't have houses to go back to. If they went back to their houses, there was so much storm damage. People lost everything. If you had just minor damage when you went back home, when you were able to even get back into the city, you were truly blessed because so many people lost so much. There was so many scammers going down there, scamming at people to fix their, saying that they're contractors. They were scamming people out of their money, doing shitty work. It was horrible. Eventually, the city came. I mean, the island. Eventually, the island was able to bounce back and, return to business as usual. But after Ike came, it was bad. Port Bolivar now. Remember, Galveston is an island. To get to Houston, you would have to come across the bay. I think that's called the bay. That's the one way out of Galveston. The other way out of Galveston, you got to catch a ferry to go to the Bolivar Peninsula to catch Highway 87, and then you be on land going that way. I remember looking at pictures from Port Bolivar. Port Bolivar, again, is the little town you got to catch the ferry to go over. Wiped out. When you saw pictures and you know what Bolivar looked like prior to the storm, but now you have to look at pictures of what the city looked like. It was almost as if there was never a city there and it was just land. And that was devastating because even though Bolivar is not Galveston, it's adjacent to Galveston, and a lot of those kids in Bolivar had to catch the ferry to come over, and they went to school in Galveston. So you could have known somebody who actually lived just across the ferry, and now everything they had was gone. I'm telling you, that Ike, it was bad. It was bad. And Otis Moore say the cows and horses that were over on Bolivar Peninsula washed up in Texas City because they all drowned in the Ike, in the flood, in the waters. It was horrible. If you have an opportunity, if that's something you think you may be interested in, Google pictures of Hurricane Ike that happened in 2008 in Galveston and just look at some of the pictures of the devastation. So throughout the month, I'll tell you a little bit about other hurricanes that have been pretty devastating throughout the country. Hurricanes. And again, I have quite a few more that I'll go over as the month progresses. So we're going to keep it moving. Again, I told you I'm not going to be on here late, y'all. Let me see. I got some comments over here on TikTok. Let me see what they said. Otis Moore say, hope I helped you with good points. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. It always helps that you got somebody who actually lived through what you're talking about so that they can add some more layers to the story.